My topic title for today is Brainy Mitten and Naughty Mittens. So this is a 53-year-old lady from Pallikonda who presented with numbness of both feet for 1 month, intermittent altered behavior for 2 weeks, difficulty in getting up from sitting position for 1 week, difficulty in walking for 1 week, with significant past history of diabetes for 8 years on insulin glargine and sitagliptin currently. 6 months ago, she also had urolithiasis, which was managed conservatively. 2 weeks back, she was started on antipsychotics for non-specific abdominal pain. On examination, she had a blood pressure of 130/80, pulse rate of 82 per minute, respiratory rate of 20 per minute, and temperature of 100 °F. Cutaneous examination showed reddish brown papillonodular lesions over the forearms and palms with overlying desquamation. CNS examination, she was conscious, oriented to time, place, and person. She had right-sided element facial palsy. Sensory system examination showed fine touch was decreased by 50% over the lower limb up to the knee and upper limb up to wrist bilaterally. Vibration sense was absent in the ankles and knees bilaterally. Joint position sense was absent at bilateral toes and bilateral ankles as well as bilateral DIP. Pain and temperature sensations were normal. Motor system examination, she had wasting of bilateral upper limbs and lower limbs, normal to decreased tone in all four limbs. All deep tendon reflexes and superficial abdominal reflex was absent. This was the power. She had 4/5 power in the upper limbs. Hand grip was weak. Hip flexion, there was hip in the lower limb, there was asymmetric power with, as you can see. Other system examination was grossly normal. So clinical syndrome of predominantly acute to subacute peripheral neuropathy, which was asymmetrical with lower limb more than upper limb, distal and proximal muscle involvement, sensory motor involvement involving the large fibers, with asymmetric cranial mononeuropathy, which is a facial nerve, and a probable encephalopathy. So our differentials we consider were Guillain-Barré syndrome, vitamin B12 deficiency, amyloidosis, paraneoplastic neuropathy, sarcoidosis, vasculitis, infections like West Nile virus, enterovirus, tuberculosis, heavy metal poisoning. Her initial blood investigations were suggestive of a total WBC of 6,700 with neutrophils of 72. Platelet and HB were within normal limits. She had normal creat and urea. Her calcium was 10.35. Sodium was 130. Vitamin B12 was 811 and TSH was 2.4. BBVS was negative. Other electrolytes were normal. CSF examination was done, which showed a CSF glucose of 40, CSF protein, which was high, 97, total WBC of 50 per cubic mm with lymphocytic predominance of 98% and monocytes of 2%. Cytology did not show any atypical cell. MRI brain was within normal limits. MRI spine showed grade 1 anterior listhesis of L5 over S1 with bilateral L5 spondylolysis, but otherwise was within normal limits. Nerve conduction studies, her NCS showed a motor conduction which showed reduced Cmaps from left ulnar and both tibial nerves. F waves were normal. Sensory conduction showed snaps from both sural and superficial peroneal nerves were reduced. H reflex was absent bilaterally. Blink reflex was absent on the right side. On the left side, it was present. So impression was sensory, motor, axonal polyneuropathy with facial weakness on the right side. CSF other, so we did further investigations on the CSF, which showed CSF culture, MGIT, expert were all negative. Fungal culture was also negative. We did a CSF cytospin, which did not show any atypical cells. PCR for multiple viruses, enterovirus PCR, West Nile virus PCR was all negative. CSF ACE was 2 and CRP was 3.96. Her ANA was negative. Anti-PR3, anti-MPO was negative, was less than 2. Serum ACE was 19. Urine spot porphyrin was negative. Anti-ganglioside antibody was also negative. At this point, we were thinking more like a paraneoplastic etiology. On further looking at her X-ray, there was hilar lymphadenopathy bilaterally in the chest X-ray. We did a CT thorax and abdomen, which showed paratracheal, bilateral hilar, and subcarinal lymph nodes. Otherwise, CT thorax was normal. So we planned for an EUS guided FNA of the subcarinal lymph node. Histopathology showed several discrete granulomata composed of aggregates of epithelial histiocytes, multinucleate giant cells. There was no necrosis, there was no definite caseous necrosis as well. So impression was a non-necrotizing granulomatous inflammation. Her skin lesion biopsy preliminary report showed paniculitis with granulomatous inflammation and lymphohistiocytic aggregates. Again, impression was sarcoid, cannot be excluded. So our final diagnosis was sarcoidosis with involvement of the nervous system, paratracheal, hilar, and subcarinal lymph nodes, and cutaneous sarcoidosis. A short note on neurosarcoidosis. Sarcoidosis, as we all know, is a multi-organ granulomatous disease of unknown etiology. Neurosarcoidosis per se is an uncommon presentation and is symptomatically present in only 5 to 16% of patients with sarcoidosis. This is a BMC. This is a study published in BMC which showed nervous system involvement was 7.5% of all the patients who presented with sarcoidosis. So the presentation of neurosarcoidosis, this is from a meta-analysis published in BMC Neurology. The most common presentation of neurosarcoidosis is a systemic sarcoidosis at admission, which is 58%. Primary neurological presentation was there in 52% of patients, and history of sarcoidosis was present in 31%. Isolated neurosarcoidosis is only in 22%. So clinical features of neurosarcoidosis. Cranial neuropathy is the most common presentation, of which facial nerve is commonly involved. Neuroendocrine dysfunction with hypothalamic and pituitary involvement can be present. Brain and spinal cord involvement with seizures, generalized encephalopathy, cognitive and behavioral problems, focal neurological deficits, myelopathy or radiculopathy, communicating or non-communicating hydrocephalus, acute aseptic meningitis or a chronic meningitis, peripheral neuropathy involvement with mononeuropathy, mononeuritis multiplex, generalized sensory motor polyneuropathy. It can even present like a Guillain-Barré syndrome kind of presentation. EMG MCV is usually shows axonal neuropathy. There can also be presentation like myopathy with asymptomatic microscopic nodules, isolated palpable nodules, or a acute or chronic proximal myopathy and muscle atrophy. So as you can see, most common presentation is 31 to 55%. There is cranial nerve palsy. In our patient, there was aseptic meningitis, which is 16 to 37%. Peripheral nerve system involvement is only in 17% of all the neurosarcoidosis patients. The test for initial evaluation, history, physical examination, which HRCT, these are all to look for other system involvement, electrocardiography, tuberculin test to rule out a TB. Investigations per se for sarcoid. So serum ACE levels in neurosarcoid was increased only in 35%. This is from a systematic review and meta-analysis published in BMC Neurology. Serum calcium was increased only in 9%. ESR was more than 20 in 32%. CSF analysis can show more than 5 cells in 58%, more protein, more than 0.45 gram protein in 63%, low glucose in 14%. Then other things that we can see are increased IgG index, oligoclonal bands, increased CSFase. Chest X-ray can contribute to the diagnosis if there are any pulmonary involvement. PET CT and scintigraphy can be useful to look for other system examination. MRI of the brain can show parenchymal lesions, meningeal enhancement, mass lesions, cranial nerve enhancement. Spinal MRI can also show dural enhancement. Confirmative diagnosis is by histopathology. This
Can
is
you
the
move the concluding slide, please? Take home points and learning points.
So learning points. Neurosarcoidosis is a rare presentation of sarcoidosis. In that, peripheral neuropathy is a rarer presentation only in 17% of people, 7.5%. High clinical suspicion is needed for diagnosis of neurosarcoid.
Thank you, Reba. That was interesting. I have a question while others are coming up with their questions and comments. She presented with isolated peripheral nervous system involvement, cranial neuropathy and peripheral neuropathy, and skin lesions. So,
Yes.
neurosarcoidosis is rare, and neurosarcoidosis is presenting only as neuropathy is even rarer. And she's a long-standing diabetic. When you hear
Yes.
of hoof beats, you should always think of horses and not zebras. So why is it not diabetic peripheral neuropathy? How did you conclude that this peripheral neuropathy is a manifestation of sarcoidosis and not diabetic peripheral neuropathy?
In this patient, there was the presentation was very acute within 2 to 4 weeks. Prior to that, there was no significant peripheral neurological symptoms for the patient. Also, she did not have other features of diabetes, the complications of diabetes like retinopathy or nephropathy. So these are the things that was favoring towards a neurosarcoidosis with a tissue diagnosis of the lymph node and the skin lesion showing granulomata. We attributed the peripheral neuropathy is most probably due to neurosarcoid.
No, I agree. She had cutaneous sarcoidosis. I'm not disagreeing that. And diabetic neuropathy, I'll ask Nihal, can it present acutely, Nihal? Can diabetic neuropathy present acutely?
Thanks for that question, OC. So rarely you can get acute polyneuropathies coming in diabetes. Having said that, I think what could have happened here is the diabetic underlying diabetes per se, which was possibly uncontrolled, could have accentuated the progression of what was underlying over here. That's a possibility. Leading on from that, I have a question. How was the response to oral prednisolone in this patient?
Following prednisolone, she actually had improvement. In the ward, she developed a bilateral vocal cord palsy, initially right, followed by left also, because of which we had to pulse the patient. She was given IV methylprednisolone for 3 days, following which she had improvement in her vocal cord paralysis, which was confirmed by a laryngoscopy, which showed improvement in the right vocal cord palsy. She also had improvement in power of her left lower limb, which had worsened while in the ward. It had become 2/5 power while in the ward. She had improvement of that. Actually, I saw the patient on review after 1 week, and she was requiring 2 people support to walk with a power of 3 to 4 in the lower limb, which has improved during the review. She is able to walk with 1% support currently.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think, in fact, when you mentioned that, I was glad that they've used pulse dose methylprednisolone. I guess for these more subacute presentations, whether that would be the first form of treatment to use, and perhaps even augmented with something like methotrexate at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to hear from Amit, the consultant, Amit Balchandran, AGC.
Yes, sir. So just like you mentioned, initially we actually disconnected the two syndromes that she had. One was a leptomeningeal involvement with an encephalopathy, and second was this rapidly progressing peripheral neuropathy, which is asymmetrical and involving both sensory and motor systems. In fact, the initial history that we got was only that of an altered sensorium, which was progressive. And once she became a slightly better in the ward after correction of electrolyte abnormalities, is when she gave this history of ascending kind of paralysis, element paralysis. Then we looked back, put one and one together, and went by Occam's razor, and that's when we thought of a disease that involves both the leptomeninges and peripheral nerves together. And like Reba said, we could not attribute the neuropathy just to diabetes because there were no other microvascular complications that we could find. In the ward, she had progression of lesions. She had new skin lesions. She had involvement of the vocal cords. The element facial palsy actually developed in the ward. That's when we knew that this is something that is rapidly progressing and which is active. And then that is when we searched for, sarcoid was one of the differentials. We searched for sarcoid elsewhere. And then we found these nodes, and biopsy showed non-caseating granulomas. In fact, we had to decide to pulse her even before the biopsy reports were available. We just had evidence of non-caseating granulomas in one of the skin biopsy, which could have been very well be a granuloma annulare or something like that. But when she had that rapid worsening on a Sunday morning, we had no other option than to go ahead and pulse, and that actually worked. By the next day, she was up and about and back to her baseline neurological status. And on follow-up right now, she's doing quite well actually. So, and yeah.
Thank you very much. Very interesting case. Usually for the non-neurological manifestations of sarcoidosis, the response to steroids is pretty gratifying and pretty rapid. So here this patient still needs assistance. So anyway, let's follow her up and see. Thank you very much. In the interest of time, we will move on. Next presentation is from Medicine 2, Adarsh and Amit Mandal. It's titled Who Unit. Adarsh, please go ahead.